And Walter is not with us today, so lucky all of you. I am going to be chairing the meeting. This is Mary Beth. Elaine is not with us today. She is flying to Washington, D.C. for an Amtrak board meeting, and Jason is going to be my right-hand person. So it is 9:01, and we are going to call this meeting to order. And Jason, are you ready to?
Take roll.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right. Here we go. Susan Bradley. Susan. Samantha Kinney.
Present.
Terry Lindenberg.
Present.
Layla Hamoud. Hello. Andrew Mills.
Here virtually, but I'll be attending soon
Right.
in person.
Thanks, Andrew. Mary Beth.
Here.
Dan Solis.
Here.
Steed is not here. Teresa Votter.
Hello, here.
David White.
Present.
Excellent. I believe that gives us a quorum.
Fantastic. Thank you. The first item is, do we have any agenda additions or changes? Do you want to say?
Yeah.
I do.
suppose- Okay, go ahead, Andrew.
I have an addition. I'd like to, I wrote an op-ed that I showed to a few people, including Elaine Clegg at Transit Day, Canyon County Transit Day, and I would like to submit it when I get there to be published on VRT's website.
Yeah, so Andrew, we're gonna have to, we'll have to add that to the next, probably to the agenda of the next meeting, which we'll set this morning.
Okay.
But it might be a good thing to discuss the letter today. I will say adding it to the RAC or to the VRT website, we can do that. It would have to be if approved by the RAC body. So if it's going to be a representative letter from the RAC, it would have to go through that approval process. We'd be happy to publish it on the website. So we can talk about that this morning. Maybe what I would do is have that, we can have that conversation after the meeting. That is okay.
It's perfect.
That'll work.
The only thing I was going to suggest we add, and Mary Beth brought this up this morning, was just an update about funding Canyon County Transit Day, some of the work that we've been doing around budget recently. Does that sound good? Do you want to provide anything, or do you want me to talk?
That sounds absolutely perfect. Shall we have that be our first information item, or
Yeah.
shall we put that last?
I think that works as the first information item. Perfect.
Okay. Okay, great. So then we will add that to under the information items. The next thing on the agenda is the consent agenda, and we have nothing on the consent agenda at this time. So let's, and we also have no action items. So we're going to move into information items, and the first one will be that RAC update. So Walter and I were approached about the possibility of RAC writing a letter to the city of Napa about transit. They have 3 different options that they have offered the public. That's like to totally eliminate service. The second was, I think, to keep it the way it is. And then the third was to expand their service. VRT also approached other businesses and organizations to write letters in support for transit to the city of Napa. So we decided, because it was after our last meeting and before this meeting, and the letter needed to be sent in, we decided to move forward and write a letter. And what we did is we took the letter for the OPED that we had written, I think it was like a year and a half ago. Remember, we had a draft, we sent it to everybody, they gave their input. and it talked about the importance of transit. We just copy and pasted that letter and then added some lines in there about talking about the city of Napa, and we forwarded it that so that it would be in the city council agenda packet. So normally we would get approval, but we thought because we took that letter and just added in bits about Napa, that that would be okay. So, and then Jason is going to give some updates about what's been happening. The city of Boise had their public hearing and there were some really great testimonies for that. And Jason's going to talk about what's happening in Canyon County. Thank you.
As best I can without Stephen and Elaine here. We'll try. But Canyon County Transit Day, we held that on May 6th, and I dropped a link in the chat, which kind of outlines all the efforts that went into that. I do want to thank the RAC for participating to the extent that everyone could and did. This was a huge effort. When we heard from Nampa City Council that they wanted to see these different scenarios, we kind of initiated this process to get public input, knowing that it would be important to share the public perspective of those scenarios. And the tricky thing with any of these funding cycles is always the timeline. When we have the conversations about service versus when the budget decisions are made versus when the public can provide input, it's really tight and it's really hard to make that work. And that is just within a singular municipality. When you kind of set those beside, like a single city like Nampa, beside the progress that we have to make in Caldwell and in Boise, and obviously, you know, our regional system is regional in that it's connected. The routes are connected, the services are connected, so the funding is all connected, and so it's really challenging to have these conversations the way that we currently do. And I know Elaine's been very outspoken about how that doesn't really work, but to the extent that we can, we try to get out and get public input. And I will say, you know, given the tight turnaround, which is pretty typical within that budget timeline, this one went fairly well. We got comments from nearly 200 people by the end of this effort, and I think we were only really out there for a couple weeks. But that included being on board buses, online surveys, open houses on May 6th. And then we had a great stakeholder meeting, like a kind of a stakeholder focus group during the day on May 6th as well. And Terry was there. A couple folks from a lot of health clinics were there, and we got some really good feedback and testimony that we tried to package up and convey to the city council on the 15th. So that was last Thursday morning. They had a budget workshop at 7. So as it stands right now, they're going to be processing through all of their budget requests. As you might know, our budget asks always sit beside a lot of other general funds requests. So it's always kind of a battle for available funds, which is even more challenging right now because of state legislation that prohibits or restricts some of the available funding to cities. So you know, it's just a fun time all around. So right now we are waiting to hear from them. I believe the published date for their budget was in, I want to say mid-June. I just looked at it and I'm kind of blanking on the date, but they're going to do, I think it's mid-June, a public hearing, and the budget's going to be available to the public the day before that. It's right there on the Nampa City Council their finance website. They have a really clear timeline on that process. So I can follow up with information on that. And then coming up mid-June, we'll have a session with Caldwell as well. I don't have an update necessarily on what that looks like. We don't have a similar request like we did with Nampa. There's not, you know, different scenarios at play at the moment as far as we know. So when I get more information about what's happening in Caldwell, I'll be happy to pass that along. And then, yeah, Boise, we being Elaine and Stephen, presented to the city of Boise at their budget workshop. Gosh, it's all a blur now. It was a few weeks ago. And then there was a public hearing where we had a few members of the public testify on behalf of improving transit. Boise's always a great conversation, or typically a great conversation. They often align with what we're trying to do, and there's a lot of pieces in place that make it smooth functioning, I would say. We have that MOU with the city of Boise, so there's a little bit more of a guaranteed and locked in amount that we can count on. And we have a lot of alignment with goals and with their climate goals and their transportation goals. So that one went pretty smooth, but we are kind of along with everyone else waiting to hear back on what the final budget proposal is going to be. So that's kind of where we stand on the budget side. As far as I know, there may be new things happening. Any questions?
Madam Chair, Jason, when you did the budget for, Nampa and Caldwell, I know for Treasure Valley Transit, we've seen large increases in insurance costs, et cetera. Did you have a large increase that you were asking for to just maintain service?
That is a great question. I'm not sure. I know that the amount was enough to kind of keep service steady. So it wasn't, one of the scenarios was not an increase to service overall. I don't know if the amount was more than last year. That's a good question. I would imagine so. And I see Jason is on. He might be able to answer that a little better than myself. Did you catch that question, Jason?
Yeah, Terry, so you were asking if our insurance expenses increased? Is that correct?
Well, I wondered what was the percentage of increase that went to Nampa and Caldwell compared to last year? I know for TBT, we saw large increases, for example, in insurance.
Yes, I am actually working on that right now. I think, I better not say. I will be able to provide a percentage probably later this afternoon. We're tweaking our numbers as I speak. So, but there is definitely an increase, and our insurance definitely did increase. I mean, most of everything went up across the board.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Okay, so if I may add something, if you'll remember when we had our joint meeting and Mayor Wagner from Caldwell expressed his frustration that, the public didn't show up to express their need for public transit. And I know that Mayor Kling has said the same sort of thing, and now is really a great time for people to send emails. You don't have to wait for a hearing to send an email to the city council and the mayor to let them know the importance of it. And if you've heard people who live in Canyon County who have said, I really want to take the bus, but there's not a bus available, talk to those people and have them email all of the city council members and the mayor and have them tell them how important transit would be for them. I mean, now is the time to do this. And it's the squeaky wheel, right? If the mayor and the city council members aren't hearing from their constituents how important public transit is to them, they're going to think it's a very low priority for their cities. So if you live in those areas, if you work for a company or organization that's there, or you talk to people who say they would like to ride the bus, I would really encourage you to just send them an email very, very soon before that budget is set. I know that I've been in communication with the city of Caldwell, and they're going to have their budget hearing on August 18th. At that point, they kind of have a good idea where that money's going to be going. So now is the time to communicate to them. And I'm almost wondering if for a future agenda item, we should have something about who do you contact? How do you contact them? How do you make an effective change? Because it can be intimidating to people and they don't know who to contact. So maybe that's something that we can talk about in preparation for next season. Does anybody have any comments? Sam?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think any tools that we can offer people
And doing that would be helpful. Verbiage, kind of not necessarily a template, but close, to make it the easiest possible thing for them to do. Would be helpful. And this group could inform that. It would be a great little work session for us to just knock out a tool.
I love that. That's a great idea, Sam. And those hearings where people verbally go in front of the mayor and city council, those are really powerful too. You know, those are typically only a 3-minute testimony, but a lot can be said in 3 minutes. So I love that. Andrew, you have something? Go ahead.
I'd like to mention that I was a peer mentor at Operation Advocacy this past year, and it's not as glamorous as it sounds.
Don't diminish it. That sounds great.
No, one of the people that I was helping, I sent a template email and for her to meet with her legislator, and she was like, "That's it." So a lot of people, there's a lot of, oh, they're a legislator, we got to talk like hoity-toity to them. But no one realizes they're just people.
Yeah, good point. Thanks for doing that, Andrew. It's good that we give people the tools they need to make a difference, and that it can be kind of intimidating, but it's important, and they want to hear from the people that they represent. So thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
Go ahead,
I
Terry.
recently attended a Nampa Chamber. They're doing a governmental affairs meeting. And it was incredible because they started out with, how do you talk to your legislators? And then the next one was, how do you talk to the city of elected officials? Then the next one, was how do you talk to your commissioners? And it was very well attended, way more so than even people that registered. And I think it was the interest involved in having senators, Mayor Kling spoke. We had commissioners in attendance talking about how to reach out to them. And so it's something like that, I think, is very positive. I sent several of my staff to that as well.
That's great. Thank you for sharing it. That is a really good idea. I'm going to write that down. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Oh,
I'll just
Jason?
add from our side, I love this idea so much. It's always challenging to activate. It's challenging to activate people to make public comment, especially when there's multiple cities, tight deadlines, and often, we get the question, how do I make an impact? How do I make a comment? And it's hard for people to show up at a public hearing. It's hard for people to show up at, a morning workshop or whatever it is. It's hard for people to show up at events that we put on. And we know that. Getting people to go, it's just very challenging. But we kind of have to strike that balance between education and advocacy, right? And I think we take it about as far as we can to educate the public without sort of crossing into any boundaries on encouraging people what to say or how to say it. But the RAC is in an interesting position as like sort of, obviously a connection to our work and what we do, but you do have like an independent voice. I think I'm just reiterating what you've already said, but I think this is fantastic. And I wonder, we'll talk about this in item C, about the next meeting. I'd been kind of thinking about it in July just because the spacing works, but I wonder if like we could do it in June and maybe start the conversation then too. Just something to think about as we set the next meeting, if we want to try to get ahead of some of the stuff this year, or if we want to set it for July and maybe talk about it next year. But I'll leave that up to you guys.
Great. Thank you all for your input. We're going to go ahead and move on to, go ahead, Andrew. Sorry.
So I mentioned Operation Advocacy. Is there a way I could be more involved with the transit advocacy? Like maybe we could have an Operation Advocacy specifically dedicated to transit. And those of you here who remember being on this council with Jeremy Maxon, he might be a good person to tap for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we should make this an agenda item for one of our upcoming meetings, and then we can kind of brainstorm about how can we do this? What would this look like? Because I like all those ideas that you're all are throwing out, but really brainstorm and kind of nail it down as to how we'd like to do it. And yeah, Jeremy's fabulous. So, all right. Okay, Jason, FY26 marketing and outreach, please.
Right. Got my slides. Okay. Let's dive in. So this information item, I should say this is an information item. The goal today is to provide a review of past marketing efforts and kind of preview plans over the next fiscal year and beyond, as well as, I say as well as, but it's primarily to seek feedback from you all. And we'll just get into it. So we had a staff retreat actually just yesterday. We've been kind of pushing it around a little bit because you know, we've had a lot of initiatives going on. So we tried to find a good chunk of time that we could all sit down. And we have a relatively, I would say now complete, but new and fresh communications team. We just added, so Nick, I'm showing a slide that shows our team, and Nick is in the front there. He's our newest addition to the team. He's our communications specialist, and kind of going clockwise around the picture. There's myself, Kathleen Godfrey's our business accounts manager. Haley Linhart-Weiss is our community outreach manager, and then Mel Roper is our marketing projects manager. And so, you know, with the addition of Nick's position, Nick is now leading our social media. I've kind of been waiting on that to really dive into a team strategy so we could make sure all positions are filled and we could kind of start our strategy process. So we had that retreat just yesterday. And so I'm going to go through that a little bit, talk to you all about what we talked about and get some feedback from you all on sort of what we envision for the next few years. So we did a kind of a history of communications at VRT because it's changed a lot even in the short time that I've been here, but it's changed over the decades that VRT's been around. And I think that's really important to set context and to help us kind of look to the future. And then we also talked about values, goals, and things like that. And so I want to kind of talk a bit about what we have in mind for the next few years, but really get your feedback on how to make really effective impacts to the community. And so to start, we kind of mapped out history of communications at VRT. And on the screen, I have columns that show year by year for the last 4 years, essentially. It's very scribbly for those that are looking at it. My handwriting is not great, but it's really a demonstration of quantity. So 2020 and before, we have a column for that. And I'm not doing it justice because a lot of things happened in 2020 and before. But really what I mean to show here is that I came on at the end of 2021, and Mark was still here. Mark is now retired and living his best life, and we miss him dearly. So I came in as Mark was leaving, and then we just kind of grew the team year after year. So 2022 is when Haley and Kathleen joined VRT, and that was when CityGo was a separate department, kind of a separate initiative, a different past program. We added Mel to the team in 2023, and then just a year ago in 2024, we actually combined, and I don't know how much we've talked about this in this meeting, but we combined some of the CityGo staff into the communications staff because they were doing a lot of outreach and communications work. And it just kind of made a lot of sense for us all to be more on the same page as far as we're getting out, we're talking to the public, we're just talking about different VRT topics, whether it's services or past programs or whatever. So it made a lot of sense to kind of pull it together into a cohesive team. So that was just a year ago, and then we just added Nick a couple months ago. So we've developed this team quite a bit over the last few years, and that's been really intentional. Before when Mark was here, it was kind of a one-man show, and then we had a few divisions. We had our development division, operations, and finance, and then IT and communications were kind of supporting, but we didn't have a lot of resources or people to really do a lot on the support side. So that was one of my charges coming in, and that was one of Elaine's focuses when she first came here. We did this. That's what happened in May, was kind of a large reorganization. And so since then, we've kind of like grown our available budget a little bit on marketing. And in 2024, we did the first major marketing campaign, I believe, that VRT's done. The other thing I'm trying to demonstrate in this is that we had a ton of different initiatives, but a lot of them were great, but they were somewhat reactive, I would say. It was kind of, there's a project happening, we're putting out an initiative. There's a budget hearing, we're putting out an initiative. But there wasn't necessarily a cohesive campaign. In 2021, and I think a little before that, we ran some radio broadcast advertising just to be in the market. And I say that in quotes because that was the phrase used at the time. And it's a great theory, but again, often there wasn't a consistent message that we had to point back to. It was kind of like, what's going on at VRT? Let's talk about that on the radio. And so while effective and while it brought attention to what we were doing, there wasn't a larger strategy around it. So that's kind of what initiated this Let's Ride campaign, which we've run for the last year. The purpose of that was, well, first identifying that brand awareness was pretty low in the Valley. We had a lot of folks, and we all know this, that would say, "Oh, we have a bus system." Like, things have been improving over the years, right? We've been in the news more in the last 5 years. We've been involved in a lot of community events, but still brand awareness was fairly low. And so what I was kind of imagining or forecasting was, not only do we need to raise awareness if we're going to grow ridership, but we have this potential opportunity in conversations at the state level to change our funding structure. This is a conversation that's been happening for years and years and years, but it's something that when Elaine came in, she identified as like a big priority. She wants to make sure that we're talking about funding and trying to see some structural change to how funding works. So to complement that, we need public support, right? We're not going to, like we've talked about just now, we're not going to get any kind of substantive change if there's not public support around it, especially if it's some kind of a tax or some kind of a levy. So that was kind of the impetus behind Let's Ride was let's gauge awareness. Let's, if we need to, and we did, kind of run a general awareness campaign that acted as kind of a brand facelift, an introduction to VRT, and as much as possible to make VRT appealing, attractive, something that people want to engage with. Not necessarily a promotion of service. While we did do that, it was more about getting our name and brand out there. And so what we're doing right now, like, this is going to be actually the last month of the Let's Ride campaign. We're pretty proud of it. It was quite successful. I will have a campaign end report that I'll share with you all. But I have been putting in monthly updates in our department packets. So you can review my department packet if you'd like to see, or my department report if you'd like to see kind of the month-by-month status. But we're talking about millions of impressions every month across digital, social. We've been running digital video ads on primarily Hulu at first, and then it kind of shifted. We work with our marketing partner, and they have a great tool that algorithms the right placements. So it made it pretty easy to run that campaign. But we also had some outdoor stuff. We had bus wraps, shelter wraps, billboards. So it was a pretty comprehensive campaign, and actually won quite a few awards. We We won an award at APTA, like an integrated marketing campaign award. And we're actually in the running for like a national award on that. And then our marketing partner Stoltz won a few awards for their work too. And I should probably send an update on that to you all. But a couple of them were in award ceremonies where they were up against some major brands like Levi and like some really big firepower brands. So this campaign, did a lot on the visibility side in the marketing private sector too. So all that to say, let's ride with sort of this, let's raise the awareness as much as possible in a year. Like what can we do in a year? And that's what this is all about. And I think for that purpose, it's done its job. Again, I'll get a final report on total metrics. But we have been tracking ridership along that. Ridership, there's so many variables that go into ridership. It can be tricky to track, but we have seen growth in ridership over the last year. But our app downloads, the UMO app downloads is one of the biggest factors month after month. Hundreds of new downloads every month. And again, the report will summarize this all, so we'll know for sure how successful it was. But that was the main idea, was if we could get people excited about our service, activate them, and if they're going to take any action, it's download the app. From there on, it's kind of a function of, does the service work for them? Because in some cases we know it just frankly won't, and we hope that it will, but it might not. But if we can get people in the door, that was kind of the idea behind this campaign. But that did require kind of a broad effort. It was mostly Boise. It was Boise focused, but still quite a broad marketing effort. And so, what we want to do next is kind of target. And we've talked about route reach over the years, and this is the time that we're going to really lean into that. So the idea right now is to sort of pivot from that larger campaign into more targeted work. I'll talk about that here in a second. But first, what I'm showing on the screen here is talking about our retreat yesterday. We wanted to start with, what's the agency strategy? What are our goals as an agency, and how can we as a communications team support that? So we've been doing some ongoing strategy work within the executive team, and kind of outlining major projects and things like that. What I'm showing here is not like a final summary of that strategy. It's kind of this is where things kind of stand now in my perspective. So I've kind of summarized the work into these 5 different tenets, and we're trying to kind of fit things within that. So the first tenet here is grow, and I just attached a verb to it because we need action, right? So grow. And that's expanding access and ridership, where we're trying to connect people to places by delivering seamless mobility options. The second tenet is build, which is earning trust and inspiring support on the public side. The third is internal. It shows here, elevate, strengthening organizational excellence, and that's kind of our internal work. And then the other 2, innovate, so that's modernizing infrastructure and technology. We're doing that with real-time arrival signs, with better bus stops and things like that. And then the final one is sustain, which is securing and stewarding sustainable funding, something that we talk about all the time. So for our purposes, we really focused on the first 3. While our team is involved in the work of infrastructure technology and in sustainable funding, it's more of on the support side, sharing stories, telling stories, talking about things. But we really wanted to focus on those first 3. And what I'm going to talk about specifically today is the first 2. We have a lot of great ideas for how we do things internally, and that's incredibly important, and things that we'll bring to this council. But the quickest action we need to take is going to be in the first 2 items. And so we try to dial in specifically what we can do and what we need to do to make a lot of these work. And I should say, these are things that we've talked about a lot over the years. This isn't new information. But I kind of saw this as like let's go back to the drawing board. We've just run this big campaign. Let's start from scratch. Where are we where we need to be, essentially? And so the first 2 that I want to look at are inspiring ridership and promoting services. That's kind of how we see our role within that first strategy portion. How do we inspire people to ride, and how do we promote the services available to them? And then the second piece is earning trust and inspiring support. That's super connected to the funding conversation. And for us, it's enhancing truth-forward public awareness. And when I say truth-forward, I just mean really honest about the things we're facing. I think our messaging has developed a lot over the years, from, I would say, more conservative about our funding situation to being just really open about this is the challenge we're facing. I think people are picking up on that. The discourse, both online and in person, the conversations that I have. I mean, this is anecdotal, but we're noticing people that are knowledgeable about the challenges that we face, and it's not just us. It's TVT. It's every transit agency in the state, and that's been kind of approached from a variety of places and angles. It's us. It's CTAI. It's the work Terry does. It's a lot of different efforts, but this is a really important thing as we're trying to grow all services across the state. And then that last piece is, again, that internal focus on brand identity and internal alignment. But again, I want to focus on the first two, and that's what I want to bring to you all. So really what I'm hoping for is kind of some idea generation. We have years of ideas that we're putting together. We've talked about stuff in this committee and council. We've talked about stuff on our team. What we're going to end up having is a document that's essentially a 5-year roadmap. We're going to try to identify, the projects we need to just keep going this year, new projects that we can add this year that are going to be impactful. And then, knowing that we can't do everything all the time. What do we need? When can we land some other projects, some new initiatives, and what resources might we need, whether that's new staff or volunteers or ambassadors or whatever, to support those initiatives. So this first one, I'm just going to introduce it and kind of throw out the idea to everyone and see what you have. But the first topic here is inspiring ridership and promoting services. So we're trying to get people on board. We're trying to get people to connect to these services. And what we have listed here, and I'm going to keep it brief intentionally, is route reach. So that's targeted outreach to specific routes, destinations, and partners. We are looking at account growth and past programs specifically as a tactic and a tool, and then improving the existing experience. So not only attracting people, but making sure that their existing bus ride is as good as possible. We have a very lofty goal where we can't run the service necessarily that we want to, but we can aspire, I think, to make this like the easiest to use system we can imagine. That's kind of our aspirational goal. But I just want to throw this out there to the group. And my question is, what have you seen that has been successful? What things would you like to see us do to affect inspiring ridership and promoting services?
The image you have up there of that particular advertisement, I noticed, does anyone ever go look at the comments on Facebook on the posts you guys do? That one didn't have any real positive comments. One of them was like, why do they need the bus if they've got the roller blades or roller skates? That's
Sure.
one thing I think should change.
My mic keeps turning off. So about the Let's Ride campaign, I will say that we're looking forward on this one, but a lot of that was pretty intentional on integrating transit in with other modes of transportation too. So we have bikes in some of them, and we have, and we did get a lot of, absolutely, we got negative comments. Most of the time, that's what we get. Anytime you get a social media post, it's usually negative. We also got a lot of really good engagement. So I would encourage you to look at the likes, the shares, things like that. Because what those ads also did was drive people to the website, and our website increase was substantial. And we had some promotional codes. So I don't disagree with you. Yes, there were some negative comments for sure. And we kind of anticipated that going in. And that's part of why we branded it the way we did. We're trying to be kind of bright, bold, exciting, eye-catching, to bring attention to what we were doing. Because in everything, there's always a bus in the background. There's always a bus present. There's activity happening at the front, and there's a bus kind of tucked behind. But point taken. That absolutely is true.
no one was actually riding the bus, which I feel is like a bit of an oversight. Maybe.
We had a lot of ads with people riding the bus. You might not have seen them though. Yeah.
Jason, when I talk with our marketing person who I have worked with at other organizations, so we followed each other along. She always talks about the conversion rate and like how you convert people through curiosity. This makes people curious about moving differently in the city. So I think it's exactly that. It makes people curious enough to get onto the website to start exploring. Some of the tactical things that I think have been very helpful is putting at every site, at every bus stop, the schedule. So people can just like see, oh, this is an actual bus stop and here's the timing of when things come by. I think that's been a huge win for your marketing. I think the new flags at all the bus stops are more visible and easier to read. So I think that has been an improvement and has inspired, at least a little bit more awareness from what I've heard with people that I talk to. So those are two things that I think have been really great. And I love the curiosity that campaign brought.
And I hate to be monopolizing the mic, but what's the point of having like the sign IDs if we can't say, hey, can you get a bus on demand to pick me up at stop at AC 013? Why can't we just have them pick us up at that stop ID?
Are you talking about, so you're talking about on demand?
Yeah.
And there are on-demand stops that aren't available as on-demand stops?
No, we're not able to give them the sign blade ID. Instead, we just have to give them the address of the place.
Oh, I see what you're saying. That would be, that's a great question. That's more of an operational question, but I can pass that on to our operational folks and ask about them.
So Jason, do you guys ever post any like success stories of people that have rode and it has changed their life?
That's actually one of the things on the list that we don't do enough of. It's a great question. We have kind of shown stories here and there as we get them, but we haven't necessarily had a concerted effort or like a campaign to try to get those stories. I would say most recently around Caney County Transit Day, we have a lot of great testimonial, a lot of great statements that we were able to share with the city council. We have a video that we cut together for the city council talking about specific access and beyond access service. Andrew was one of the folks on the video, so thank you, Andrew. But that's one thing we've identified as something we need to do more of, is showing people riding.
I do have
experience. Yeah,
I do have a coworker that just recently restarted writing the Beyond Access because he lives off from Lake Hazel. So it recently opened up earlier this year, I believe. I'm not exactly sure when it did, but it made it so he could go to pulmonary therapy. And he got COVID 2 years ago and has been on oxygen and carries an oxygen, a pulse oxidator with him everywhere. And he just, every time he comes to work, he just about passes out. Can't wait to get in a seat at the office. And this made it so he could go to pulmonary therapy. And he's lost like over 30 pounds. He got rid of his oxygen. It has just made a huge difference in his life because they opened up that area where he lives to go into Meridian, where the pulmonary therapy is. And I know he would be able to, and he'd be very willing to give you a video of his success story, because it's been very fun to watch him go through his transformation just because of the bus system.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love every minute of that. I think, and I'm sure there's more stories either through the rack. I mean, we know broadly, like we want to do a call for stories to the general public and to all of our writers, but that's probably, I'm writing that down as a follow-up to this group. If you have anyone that's interested, we would love to send some folks out and take video and use the video if possible, because not only do we get, a video from that we can post on our website, post on YouTube, post on social. We can also pull quotes and kind of log that feedback. So thank you for the story. That's super inspiring, and I'm so glad to hear that happened. And yes, let's coordinate on getting together with that individual.
He would definitely be willing to do that.
Leslie has her hand up. Go ahead, Leslie.
I just wanted to make sure I understood Andrew's question so I can get you the right information when you ask me, Jason. Is he asking to use the stop ID when booking a ride on demand? I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Leslie, for following up on that. I wanted to just say a couple of things, and I agree with Sam. I loved that Let's Ride Boise campaign. I thought that it was vibrant and engaging. And the first time I saw one of the ads on TV was, I must have been watching Hulu when it came up. I didn't know that was a possibility that was going to happen on Hulu, but the music was uplifting. The colors, what was happening was very engaging. I think they just nailed everything. The people, the music, it was really fabulous. And I love Deanne's idea. And along with that, one of the testimonies at the City of Boise hearing was a man who talked about choice riders. And he's like, if you're going to increase your ridership, you have to get those choice riders, people who are choosing to ride. They may own a vehicle already, and they may be able to afford that vehicle. But, talking about why would you choose to ride? Why would you choose to ride the bus? I mean, you could kind of go along with Deanne's idea of having just a brief little testimony of somebody saying, this is why I ride. A lot of times at those hearings, you see a lot of the same people, advocates in the community. I'd never seen this guy before. And so I thought it was really intriguing to hear his perspective saying, there's a lot of outreach to people who need to have access to public transit. How do we get people to ride it, to choose to ride public transit? So, yeah, just a short blurb on that. Like,
Yeah.
I choose to ride because blank.
Yeah, I think it's showcasing, it's making it so that you can relate to people that are riding, right? I mean, that's so much of what we hear is that, it's not for me. I don't see anyone like me riding. That's part of the campaign was trying to get, real riders on board. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for user-generated content. We've talked a lot about that, both, stuff that we can get from the public and stuff that we can go take and help shoot. So yeah, we're building quite a list, which is exciting. Mary Beth, what you were talking about speaks exactly to the purpose of and why we call it route reach. It's a bit silly, but the purpose really is like to approach a route in a super comprehensive way. With a campaign like Let's Ride, it's broad enough that it's really hard to focus on any specific route or any specific promotion of service. And we know that our best chance to get folks on board is if the service is really high. If we have a high service level, right? So we're trying to look at, we've ranked our routes, and when we're trying to say like, okay, we're going to spend 1/4 on 2 or 3 routes, and one of them might be the 3, because we know that there's probably a huge chunk of people on the 3 that we can target and convert into riders that aren't right now because the service is really good. So what can we do to get them on board? So we're looking at doing just really a comprehensive push. So mailers, door-to-door stuff, posters at businesses, past programs, benches, like really identifying the benches now that we have those, public art, pop-up events, like really just a multitude of things for a whole quarter to see if we can't enact change and show ridership growth. Obviously, we can't do them on every route. So that's why we have to kind of select 1, 2, 3. 3 even feels like a lot if we're going to do that much of a deep dive. But then it's leveraging ambassadors and people like you all, our network, to see how we can kind of really focus on those areas. And so, but we also know we need to balance that out with trying to get new riders on our inter-county routes, our express routes. How do we activate park and rides in a better way? How do we, the 40, the 42, it doesn't stop a lot. So there's not a lot of or it stops less frequently. So there's less places to really activate. But where we know people ride, either boarding or getting off, we know that's where we can maybe attract more riders. So like we're trying to apply a set of tactics to pretty much to each route. We're going to kind of individualize a package for each route and really dive into that. So that's kind of where we're going to put a lot of our energy and effort, where in the last year it was, this broad-based awareness. Hey, we're here and we're fun and we're cool and come check us out. Now we're like, okay, now there's something for you. And that's kind of what we're looking at over the next few years. Also knowing that there might be this parallel track of needing to raise even more awareness about funding. And that kind of gets to that second piece of truth forward awareness, authentic community connections. We've been doing a lot of building partnerships and collaboration, being visible at places like the chambers and various community groups and organizations. Here I have listed highlight community success and stories. So really doing a lot of storytelling, how services truly impact people's lives. So that's kind of this bucket of strategy. Okay, I'm gonna end my part. I do want to keep the floor open if anyone has any other comments, and we're going to be developing the strategy. I mean, it's going to be ongoing. We're going to try to get going on some route reach here soon. Being realistic, it might be a fiscal year thing because that's when our budget starts, but there's a lot we can do over the summer. So we're going to try to get some work done then. If you have any additional ideas as things move along, I'm always open to it. Love it. Like I said, this document is going to be our 5-year work plan essentially. And I want you all to kind of feel included in that and like you make an impact, because you truly do. So I'll leave the floor open for additional comments. And then when we have sort of that final document, I'll share it with everyone, and we can, sometimes that's a great way to generate ideas too, is having something to react to. So anyway, open to additional comments, and then we have one more presentation today.
I actually had you guys know I'm big into the disability realm, right? The Let's Ride BOI video snippet that you put up, that was very assaulting to the senses if you watched it with headphones. And I was wondering if there's a version of it that's like sort of muted color-wise and has less jarring music.
That's a great point, Andrew. There's not. And that was, part of the strategy was to try to be bright and bold and vibrant, but point taken. I'm sorry that was the impact too.
It didn't assault me, don't worry, but
but if it could be, if it could be to anyone, right? No, that's a really good point. That's a great point. Like I said, we are sunsetting that campaign on the digital side. We're still going to have our physical assets out on shelters and bus wraps and stuff like that. But that will be like this. We're about done with it actually. So, but I appreciate you bringing that up. That's something that we will make sure to consider more in future campaigns.
Jason, I haven't seen the video. Is there any way, or the little commercial, is there any way it can be sent out so we can watch
Yeah,
it?
absolutely.
Okay. And then
Yep.
quite often, as I work with the visually impaired community, there's a lot of commercials out there that are just like music.
Mhm.
And then you don't really, it's not a lot of speaking. And sometimes I don't even know what the commercial's for, when I'm watching TV. So I'm wondering if it has that content verbally spoken on it.
It doesn't. It's very yeah, it's very there's a lot of just music in the background that's very visual, but point taken on that as well. We do have another video set coming out. We're updating a lot of our past program, our group pass stuff, with on-screen narration. So that'll be a little bit different, different of an approach, but yeah, that's a great consideration for us down the road. And I think something that'll be helpful to note and to kind of use as a filter as we're doing the stories and the writer stories like you've been talking about. I will send out the links to those videos. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
Jason, just one more thing before.
Sure.
I really liked Mary Beth talking about choice writers, and I feel like I'm a wannabe choice writer because I want to take the bus, and I think there's a lot of us out there. So I think whatever, I think that there's a real potential for maybe some of those pop-up events to kind of bring in those wannabe choice writers to experience it and to kind of think, to get that conversion rate, right? To get that interaction and experience so that they might be more apt to like, I'm going downtown for an afternoon, or I'm going to the farmer's market. I don't want to be in that traffic. I can ride the bus there somehow. I can take the 5 or the 3 and walk with a wagon or something. You know what I mean? Just to expand people's minds until the service gets up to par. And that helps with the advocacy and that grassroots like awareness that you're looking for.
Question for you on the pop-up events, because we've kind of tossed around a lot of different ideas, whether it's at a coffee shop, next to a bus stop or something like that.
Mhm.
What would draw you as a wannabe choice writer? What would draw you to something like that?
Beer.
Love that. I love that. We can't provide beer, but we
Get a sponsor.
can get a sponsor. And we've actually been, I don't know if you all are familiar with Strong Towns, the organization. Great organization, Strong Towns. It's a lot of transportation advocacy. It's essentially a media company, but they do a lot of discussion around transportation, primarily development, housing, a lot of urban design type stuff. So there's a Strong Towns Boise chapter that has kind of been like a fledgling group that's been doing events, and so I'm on their leadership team. Maybe I'm like an advisory committee member or something, but they do monthly events, and we're going to try to host some stuff around that. But it's usually at a bar.
Yeah.
It's usually at a bar. So.
Or a food truck rally
Mhm.
at like a good parking lot
Mhm.
where it's near a big route or near Main Street Station,
Okay.
and encourage people to write in for something like that.
Yeah, and we talked about what partnerships can we tap into with whether it's a local restaurant or just activating that space in as many ways as possible. Right?
Yeah, I think what you do around Treefort is excellent. Like people start really thinking about the bus. So it'd be nice to have something like halfway through the year between Treefort times to give that. So it's just like one annual event that would be a bigger draw and remind people that, oh, you still have a choice and you can still choose to ride this. Think about it.
Indian Creek Plaza has a wine festival they do. Like it was on the 17th of this month. I went there. That was a lot of fun.
Jason, Kyle here. I know I've mentioned this before, but the Fit One Boise, that half marathon, it takes place in September every year, and it starts at the Capitol and then it ends at Ann Morrison Park, meaning that people park at the Capitol and either have to walk back or Uber back or park at one place and then get somebody to pick them up. So I think that could be a good opportunity to use a bus service, especially for that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, especially because Ann Morrison is flanked by the 3 and the 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Oh, go
One
ahead,
more-
Terry.
One more point for Jason. Do you do targeted paid ads on Facebook by zip code or
So we did with the Let's Ride campaign, and that's another thing we're looking at is kind of neighborhood focused, like more dialed in, because Let's Ride was pretty broad, and so we're looking at way more targeted social campaigns around specific routes.
Because I know that's something TBT tried this last year. It was very simple. It was safe, reliable, trusted, and our logo for the certain zip code areas.
How'd it go?
And we got all the comments were positive, and it was a lot about the bus drivers, you know, their experience with how wonderful, how helpful. And I think those type of messages really resonate with people who haven't ridden, because we heard a lot of comments like this was great information to know. And what I did was I printed out all those comments into my rural areas. And when I presented my budget request, I read them all. And I could say how many likes and stuff, because not everybody, if somebody's going to actually make a comment like that on transit, it's meaningful. It's really impacted them. So that's why I was wondering about that.
That's great. Yeah, for us, it's been more broad, but we're going to try to really hone it in.
Question on that. Are you looking at like a route and saying, here are all of the amenities that you could ride to, kind of a thing?
I think that's part of the idea. Yeah, because it's really selling travel to a place, right? So one of the places we've talked about is like the airport, really driving folks to use like the 20. The Route 20 is a great route. Its ridership is rather low, which is typical for a new route, but it's a mid-city connection to the airport, you know? So there's all these trips that people can take that we want to show that like this is a real option.
For those who, yeah, as a choice ridership, but I also see the 20 going by, going into Garden City, like Bert's and all the wineries and all of those.
100%.
Sorry, I'm going back to alcohol. I sound like a total lush. But
I'm with you, and I think that's a target focus.
If that's
audience.
running on the weekends, ride down from the bench, ride up from the north end, come to Garden City, do something in partnership with Garden City and like make it a thing for an afternoon event, those kinds of things.
100%.
Make sure that comes to Caldwell on Saturdays.
So those people riding the 20, what did they do with their luggage when they're headed to the airport? Say they're going, you know, on an airplane or whatever. Do they have a place to put their luggage, or do they actually just keep it with them?
Usually on the bus, you'll keep it with. Yeah, you keep it with. So you can usually people set it in the seat next to them.
Oh.
That's what they'll often do. Yeah. Yeah, we don't have a storage rack necessarily like an airport shuttle might, but we do have folks that will just sit it next to them.
I always take public transportation from airports in like Chicago and
Same.
San Francisco, and it's not a big deal to bring your suitcase and sit it on the seat next to you.
Yeah.
Or put it for your feet.
Yeah, same. What we just did a presentation at the City of Boise with about past programs and May in Motion, and we had somebody there that talked about riding their bike. So one of the interesting connections to the airport is how we get bikes out there and bikes on buses especially. There's not great bike storage out at the airport, but we have a bike locker at Main Street Station. So we have folks that'll bike to Main Street Station, use the bike locker, and then ride the 3 to get out to the airport, which is like such an interesting trip, such a great idea. So really trying to your point about destinations, really trying to sell those opportunities. So that's what we're trying to highlight is we've been talking about routes, destinations, and partners, and it's a partner being the airport, Boise State. Routes, we have our route matrix of routes we want to target, but then destinations. So once we're on a route, what can you get to, and how can we work with that business? Maybe it's a coupon, maybe it's an event at the business or something.
Doesn't Garden City have the art play, whatever their neighborhood logo there? That district. And the 20 goes right into it. So
20, yeah, and then the 8, which service isn't great there, but there's, I think this is what we're seeing is like, oh my gosh, there's all this opportunity. And we were hoping to do it a little earlier around service changes, but like I said, team development, we've kind of we're at a point now where I think we can fully do it. in the right way.
And the
So
more that we can show that you don't need to have parking around some of these destinations, I think the better it'll be, because that's helpful for urban planning and development as well. We don't want vacant parking lots sitting empty all the time.
so-
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for all of your
Jason?
comments. If you think of anything else, if you think of anything else, email Jason and let him know. And Dwayne, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I was just going to state that choice ridership will always come down to the pocketbook, to how things are going in your household budget. And just a couple things that to note is, I don't know, inflation has been going up. I think it's been up, it's 47% since 2010. Start looking at those numbers and you're like, can I afford to just deck out a F-250 pickup and drive everywhere and expect that I'm going to retire on time and live this great life? And I mean, there's great reports now looking at Americans are missing their car payments now at an all-time high. And I mean, the numbers are great. And so why don't we capitalize on those things?
Thanks for saying that, Dwayne. And I'm sorry I'm hogging the mic again. But I did see, and I need to find it again, but the cost of owning a vehicle, I think we discussed it a little bit here, but Idaho, I think, is the highest state to own a vehicle in the nation, or at least in the top 5, considering insurance, the cost of registration, the cost of owning a vehicle, it's highest here. So to that point, that will make for choice ridership plus all of the construction and like parking and those kinds of things. That makes people change their mind about whether they drive to a destination. For businesses, this is the business argument, for businesses to keep viable, they should want that public transportation to come in. It's another source for them to bring people in, pedestrians to walk by their businesses at a slow pace, to be curious, and again, convert into actual coming into the shop and buying things. So I think there's a business argument for it as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is actually a great transition into what Dwayne's going to talk about with residential pass, because all of what you're saying is part of our strategy of building our accounts, reducing barriers for businesses, but then using that as an opportunity to message the benefits of transit. It's not just sign up for a pass program. It's, this is what a pass program does. Even if you're not interested, this is what transit does to the community. I just want to say I am super excited about all of this. Thank you so much for the feedback. And like I said, once we get some more of a fleshed out work plan, I'll share it, because I think there's still more good ideas out there. I know that. So, and I want to show you kind of more tangibly what this could look like year after year. So that'll be something I'll be bringing hopefully next meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. And Dwayne, thank you for sharing that information. And with that, Dwayne is going to be presenting on the residential pass program updates. And Jason, where'd he go? Thank you very much for sharing that information and leading that conversation. And Dwayne, thank you.
Side? I'm fine. I can see my screen. All right. Well, morning, everybody. Great to be with you. Dwayne Wakan. And I wanted to talk to you about updates to the residential pass program and why we need to make these updates. So first of all, what is the residential pass program? So Jason talked about CityGo a little bit, but it's a transportation demand management strategy that we've deployed many years ago. We tried to get some traction with providing discounted bus passes for multifamily developments throughout the Treasure Valley. And we know that we can leverage this offering if these developments are actually close to our bus routes. So we've been working, staff has been working hard to get, something going in this vein, but this last year there was a 3-year pilot with NeighborWorks Boise, several meetings with them, and then a negotiation on what we could provide in terms of discounted passes. And so it was agreed upon with NeighborWorks Boise that we would provide reduced bus passes for 50 units. And then we issue smart cards or codes through their phone to get them onto the bus. And then this gives them unlimited rides on all our fixed route and on-demand systems throughout the Treasure Valley. Now, NeighborWorks Boise got a sweet deal because not only are they provide multifamily projects, but they're a nonprofit. So they're kind of this hybrid of what we're talking about today. But it was a kind of a good lead into other projects that have been going on, things that have been happening in the background at VRT. But why we wanted to provide an update, it's necessary because we realized that there's a lot of multifamily development happening throughout the valley. We wanted to establish kind of rates that were meeting those different now project sizes because I think we were out of sync. We want to increase our fair revenue with this program. And we wanted to be really more strategic with our engagement based on transit adjacency and project size. And so I think Jason's team is wanting that strategic, those talking points and how to engage and what do we say. And first of all, we had to kind of understand what was happening. And so we looked at our existing residential pass program rates, and the comment came that these rates are too high. And they largely focus on smaller developments. And we know that our developments are growing bigger and bigger. And then there's higher rates for these smaller units. This fee schedule has not attracted any traction. There's been no revenue through this program because of this fee structure. It's been in place for years, and so why don't we update this? So staff got together and put together some different structures that we think will work better. We're proposing rate adjustments that will focus on at least a 20 minimum size multifamily project. You'll have a sliding scale, so the larger your project, the better the rate. It'll be comparable with what rates you get if you're an employer and you get the resident employer pass program through CityGo. So we want to make things more comparable there. And then we wanted to also focus on higher breakpoints for those projects that are larger in size. So what we did is we came up with a different rate structure, and it's a range now that from if your project is between 20 and 60, then you'll get a certain price per unit, and then it just sliding scale as you grow in size, the rates get just a little bit better. And if you think about where if you live in a multifamily project right now, lots of units. Let's say you live here in Meridian. How many, if you're in like a project, let's say of 300 units, how many people in those 300 units commute to Boise like you do? Probably more than you think, right? And so there's there's probably a need to make these arrangements, and so staff, if they can leverage our outreach with a large scale project and provide a great connection, then we can start making those transportation solutions available. So what we started to do was we looked at all the projects that were adjacent to transit, like really close. And we called these tier 1 projects. And we looked at a quarter-mile buffer from all our bus routes here, and looked at all the multifamily units that were popping up in that proximity. We also did this for a half mile and 3/4 of a mile. We called those tier 2 and tier 3 projects, but we started looking at the maps and realizing there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of variability in sizes. We then looked at the existing, what we're proposing with our new fare structure here, and we're starting to see some revenue potential. This is things we had not done with our previous program. And as we started looking at, like, we could start making goals. Like, what if we captured just 20% of the market here? What could that look like? When we looked at the number of multifamily projects, you see that the largest number of multifamily projects, there's 41 projects between 151 and 500 multifamily units. So you can see that leads to 11,184 potential units there. If we have a unit rate of $21, then that generates revenue of potentially, at least that 20% goal would be 46,000. So what this does is it starts to help our staff realize and recognize where should we go and what size of units should we start talking to. And then we're starting to make in conversations with like homeowners or condo associations, and trying to get those conversations going, because when we start to leverage those conversations, then we can make a presentation, make a pitch, and then get an agreement going. So the implications for staff is, like I said, if we captured 20% of the market on, for example, 150 units, 500, that's 11,200 units. That's a lot of cards to issue, right? So are there other ways that we can issue media to those 11,200 units potentially times 2, because there might be 2 people who want a card or who want to pass per unit. So then that becomes a big concern for us. So we're looking at different ways to promote media. Is it just a digital, use your phone? But there's other technologies, stickers, for example, that have an RFID that you can, put on something, right? That will then allow you to tap the validator on the bus and get your free trip. So we're looking through all those stuff. We will be developing talking points for staff so that they know how to engage in these conversations, and calculators so that they can do the quick math of, okay, your 250 unit size, here's your total. So the quick math will be done, very simple. We want to seek board direction on what we're proposing, and then implement this as soon as possible. Because also one of the things that's happening in the background is as new projects are coming online or being proposed for all the cities, we're sitting on those development conversations, and we're like salivating to have a conversation about this residential pass program and the potential revenue we could collect if these agreements go into place, right? So the sooner the better if we can get this going. And that is my presentation. So now I'll open it up to you for Questions?
I saw Andrew had one earlier. Andrew, why don't you go ahead? And then Sam, why don't you go after Andrew?
Before I forget, yeah. So do you, with VRT, you guys have business cards, right? We could say that you put business cards in these neighborhoods and that can be one free ride. Because I know that the Y has a free day pass for every business card you have. So maybe leveraging business cards in that way could help. And then that's a foot in the door. And you can get more riders through that.
Yeah, I think the way this will work, this residential pass program, it's an agreement that we make with a condo association, for example. We would sit in like a meeting, like an HOA meeting, if you guys have been to those. We'd make a pitch and say, hey, guys, if you want to have great access to transit, your HOA board should you can pay for this discounted bus passes. They would sign an agreement. Everybody in the whole development would get that access to transit. We do not sell those on an individual, basis. Those we would just direct to our website. You can buy an annual bus pass on our website. But if you want a discount, it comes as a collective through this entire multifamily project.
Dwayne, I am just sitting here going, oh, I love this, but I think you need to get like a little bit earlier, start with planning staff at all of your municipalities, get them to dangle this as a carrot to developers to help them with variances and getting through code. This I could see being a great asset to them as they're trying to build multifamily units, to be able to say, we're building multifamily units and we've already partnered with VRT in allowing for discounted bus passes for all residents. I think that would just be a huge win. I love this. I think it needs to happen immediately, and great work. Great work.
Thank you. Those are conversations we're already having. When I sit down with Boise staff, I dangle that carrot.
Yeah.
For sure. And said, the city has a TDM policy. And if you start to leverage that policy, that zoning allowance, you get 50% reduction in parking. And then we're here to make that happen. Right. So we dangle that. Sure.
I can see this going up or making my rent go up a little bit, which kind of scares me.
Andrew, it would be an option for residents to have what they're doing is I'm assuming it would be an option for residents.
Multifamily.
Yeah.
Multifamily.
So it wouldn't necessarily hit you directly through your rent.
I was going to say, I think similar to your point, you'd want to make sure that they don't use that as a reason to increase your rent, even though it's not the direct cost, but like here's another benefit of.
So my daughter lives in a multifamily complex downtown. She's offered this because it's $250 a month extra for her to park a vehicle. So this is the alternative. So that's how they represent it, is here you can have a bus pass at a discounted rate, or you can pay for parking. And of course she doesn't have a vehicle because it's way easier to have a bus pass.
Yeah. I was just going to say one thought too, could maybe, if you need to focus your efforts instead of, since there's so many all over, is maybe where there's that senior housing. Because just in conversations I've had with people, like when they move to a development that's like 55 plus or, whichever one it is, sometimes that proximity to a bus is a reason that they chose to move to that particular place. So just kind of had that thought if you're trying to narrow down spaces.
Great thought. Thanks.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay. Yeah, this is great, Dwayne. Thank you. Thank you for all of this work, and everything everybody said is so spot on. And this is such great timing with all the The zoning code rewrite in the city of Boise. I don't know what's been happening in Meridian and Eagle, but yes, thank you.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so we are going to move into the summer meeting and topics for discussion. Jason, I'm going to let you kind of lead the one about the summer meeting, since you might have more of an idea of what some of the agenda items might be.
Yeah, so this year, and I think we did this last year too, we did not set a meeting date yet on the agenda. We wanted to bring that in front of the rack and see what everyone's availability is, what your preferences are. And not a huge choice here. We wanted to keep it to the third Tuesday if possible, but we were kind of going back and forth between June and July. And a couple ideas that we had on location. Last summer, we tried to do a site visit, and I think we've mostly visited all the sites at this point, or at least all of the VRT facilities. But we talked about maybe doing maybe it's a bus tour of some sort. I think year and a half ago, maybe, Paula, we did a bus tour for the board members to look at the rail corridor. And I did just check out a couple different spots, the depots, and Elaine kind of guided us through her vision of rail. But that's a potential site visit. I love the idea of talking about a funding toolkit or a conversation around funding toolkit as well. I think that could be a major topic this summer. I will be bringing our communications marketing plan to the next meeting in whatever form it's in. I don't know if there's any topics other than that. I'm sure there would be things that we could talk about, but the top ones on my mind is going to be our budget and funding, and then obviously we have a lot of things to promote, so our marketing.
So we have a meeting scheduled in September, right? Should we stick with our, every other month doing a meeting? And then that way by July, you'll have everything nailed down, clear, budget.
Yep.
So maybe we should stick with July. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'd prefer to stick with July. I like that.
Okay.
Every 2 months seems pretty good. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No worries, Andrew. I agree. I like the every 2 months. I wonder if there is a small group of us that would be willing to get together in a small work group ad hoc capacity to kind of develop some quick template language that we can get out to our partners for this cycle of budgets. So we're not late to the party. I think the earlier we can do that, the better. And I'd be willing to do that if anyone else would like to meet with me.
I'd be down for it if I could have availability. If I have availability, I mean.
What do you think, Jason?
I think that sounds awesome. I am available as you want me to be, as you might need me, or I can make myself available. This is super important. I do think it's a great idea to have it come from you all, and you all kind of lead it. But yeah, happy to support, help, whatever I can do to help. So that would make our meeting July 15th.
Jason, I'll send out a meeting invite now.
Perfect. And then we can dial in whether we can do a bus. Does that sound like something you guys would be interested in? Or I don't want to take away from the content of the meeting either, because that would be kind of the trade-off.
It sounds hot.
Could be. The buses have air conditioning, but it
Well,
could be.
they do, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that might be a thing we hold till later in the year. Yeah. And especially if we're going to try to tackle some topics in July, maybe we focus on a location, whether it's one of ours or maybe it's even a partner location. Maybe we can find an offsite of some sort. So I like the idea of going to places, especially if we can get there on the bus.
Okay. So in July, you want to go someplace.
I mean, we could. I'm not saying we have to. I'm
Okay.
saying maybe it would be fun if we can get there on bus to find a transit-friendly location.
Okay, okay. Well, we could talk about
I-
that. Anybody have any ideas?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Have the bus pick up.
Go ahead.
What do you mean? Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
Have the bus pick up each one of the RAC members that's gonna go on the tour.
Yeah, it'd take too long. Like the school bus.
Yeah. The virtues of mass transit, right? Trying to bring people. Yeah. We'll find a spot, whether it's one of our facilities or and maybe if any of you all want to have a meeting at your spot, or we could find a space.
Do you want to take on demand out to Southwest District Health?
That sounds
I
great.
can't get there then.
You could probably get there easier than any of us.
Well, I was thinking maybe even a library, like Hillcrest Library. You know, there's a bus that goes out there and
Right by my house.
and they have a meeting room, a larger meeting room.
I like that.
Yeah,
Just
so
need-
we can look
I'd
into
say
booking it.
Need some like planning notice.
For sure. Yeah.
planning the
And
rest of our day.
advance notice. Yeah. So
I think, if I may, in the future, Treasure Valley Transit, we're in Canyon County. We would be glad to offer up our location. It's a little off the beaten
Yes.
path, but we have a training center that seats 36, so there's definitely availability and room.
fun.
I kind of like that idea.
So I was going to offer up the Idaho Commission for the Blind. It's downtown by the Capitol. We have a library with a big conference table. That would be a good meeting place also if you guys wanted to meet there. I would just have to schedule it.
I love this so much. I think we found sites for the rest of our meetings this year, actually.
Caldwell Y would probably be a really good place too. YMCA.
Oh.
Yeah. And, okay, if we're thinking about like locations, ways that we connect to the community and encourage public trust, like having meetings like this in places outside of our facilities, I think is a huge win. I mean, being visible at places, connecting and partnering with other locations. This is exciting. Very cool.
Yeah, I agree. These are great ideas. Okay, so good enough. Well, we do know it's July 15th. We'll try to decide on a location ASAP so we can get that out so that people can plan on that. And we've kind of already discussed about our topics for discussion. If you ever think of anything, please email me, Jason, and Walter so that we can get it on the agenda. That would be really fabulous. Thank you.
Mary Beth,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
did send out the meeting invite for here,
Okay.
but we will update it as we nail down, just so there's something on your calendar.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you, Paula. We appreciate it.
I did not get the email.
Well, what's that? Oh, she just sent it out. Patience, Andrew, patience.
I want it now.
I know. Okay, that is it then. Staff reports in your packet. Be sure to read through those. There's some really great information in there. And so I'll take a motion for an adjournment, please.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, well, thank you all very much.